In a raging snowstorm, some adventurers stumble on a massive block of ice. They're shocked to find a living girl inside this gigantic block. As the girl comes out of a very long nap, she introduces herself as a former goddess and then asks the men to send their best game player. The scene then shifts to a futuristic city, where screens show humans taking on the dangerous challenges of God's games. These humans are blessed with powers called Arise that allow them to perform supernatural feats. A young man named Faye watches the players on these screens as they run around from dangerous challenges. Faye observes how the players navigate the various challenges set up by these gods, but is forced to run when people around him notice him. He then visits an office where Chief Secretary Miranda greets him. Faye complains that the person she told him about was not the girl he was looking for, and she laughs in his face for wasting so much time searching for a random person. Then, she tells him there is someone she needs him to meet, and explains that a former goddess who has been sleeping for thousands of years has woken up and wants to meet the best game player humanity has. Miranda warns Faye that he will be assigned to play with this goddess and observe her behavior. She warns him that he must never anger her since that could result in the entire city getting destroyed. Faye is terrified, but has no choice but to accept this monstrous mission. Miranda tells him that he's the most suitable candidate for this since his Arise makes him immortal. He is led to the goddess's room, where a bunch of board games are lying around. Feeling playful, Faye grabs 2 dice and predicts their faces before tossing them. When his prediction comes true, Miranda feels surprised but learns that he has an easy trick for it. Suddenly, a red-haired girl pops out. This girl reminds Faye of the big sister who used to take care of him in his childhood, reminding him of the person he was searching for. As Faye stands there gawking like an idiot, Miranda introduces him as one of humanity's best game players to the goddess named Lilashia, or Leshia for short. Leshia quickly warms up to Faye, apparently not recognizing him as a young boy she met. She begins setting out some cards on a table to begin their game. Faye thinks it's a bit too soon to start playing games since they just met, so Leshia tells him that her game will help them know each other better. She explains that they will be playing a memory game, where a player must observe which cards are being shuffled, and then pick out a pair every turn. If a player gets a matching pair, they win a point. However, in Leshia's game, the pairs all have a question on them, and if a player gets a pair with the same question, the other player has to answer it. This excites Faye, who accepts her challenge and gets ready to find out if she really is the big sister he was searching for. Once Leshia begins shuffling, though, Faye tells her to shuffle again since he already saw the cards lying face up on the table. Leshia is grateful for his honesty and uses her goddess powers to make the cards randomly move in orbit. Thus, the game is now completely fair, and both of them must pick out 1 card a turn and memorize where that moving card will be next. Once the 2 of them begin, Faye chooses a pair and gets some cards for hometown and blood. Faye laughs, saying her blood is enough to burn the whole world, before leaning on the table. Faye gets distracted by this, but Leshia thinks the clothes she is wearing are more than enough to cover her. After Leshia finishes her turn, Faye sees her getting another hometown card and uses his turn to pick out the pair of hometowns. Leshia smiles and answers that she is from the elements, a magical place filled with spiritual energy where all gods lie. She then asks Faye if he knows how humans can visit elements, and he nods, saying he visited it 6 months ago. Watching their game, Chief Miranda thinks about the gods' games. These board gods would grant humans the ability to live in the elements and call them there to challenge their games. If a human won a game, they could keep some special powers and return to Earth with them, letting the people of the Earth gain new powers to progress further. The gods had also set an ultimate reward for anyone who won 10 games in a row. They'd get any wish granted. Unfortunately, no human has been able to achieve this, but according to Miranda, Faye, the promising rookie, has a good chance. Back in the room, the game continues, and Leshia gets a wild card. She uses this opportunity to ask any question she wants and threatens Faye to tell her why he's trying to get to know her. Faye honestly tells her that it's his job to observe her, which almost makes Miranda leave brown stains on her seat. Thankfully, Leshia feels happy that Faye was honest, and tells him he has earned her trust. As the game ends, Faye smiles, saying that this is just a way to know more about the other person. Leshia then curiously asks him what he would have asked if he had gotten a wild card. Faye reveals that he'd like to know why she came to the human world. Leshia responds that she just wanted to play some games herself, but discovered that once a god descended to the human world, they couldn't go back. This dumb mistake is horrifying to Faye, but Leshia doesn't care. She then tells him that Faye has a lot of potential, and can help her get back by playing games with her and winning 10 in a row. This way, they could get not just 1, but hundreds of wishes granted, and Leshia will be a goddess again. After explaining this, Leshia takes Faye's hands and takes him to the divine gates, ready to play a god's game. Skipping to the game itself, we see Leshia and Faye in a new dimension, with a massive titan looming over them. A little guardian called a Meep announces that the game is beginning. All of a sudden, the Titan launches an attack at Leshia, making Faye scream out as a massive rock falls on her. Everyone closes their eyes but gets shocked to see Leshia stopping it with just a finger. Faye heaves a sigh of relief, remembering that she is indeed a goddess. Leshia smiles, finding his concern for her very cute, rewinding to 10 minutes before this game. We see Faye meeting up with his new team. The players are all friendly with him, but almost use the bathroom when Leshia jump scares them. The dragon goddess is a rather fearsome personality. A little guardian then appears to explain the game rules to Faye and his new team. The team thinks about the god they are facing this time, Titan, and feels confident that they'll be able to defeat him since Titan loves a head-on battle. However, the Meep evilly laughs and reveals that this game is called Hide and God Seek, and has some hidden rules they must find out on their own. Everyone is shocked that the rules have changed this time, but has no choice but to agree. As the game begins, the group scatters immediately to avoid the massive Titan chasing them. Titan then starts breaking buildings and ruining the city around them, making the group panic. Half of the group scatters away, while one half remains with Faye and Leshia. One of the members suggests hiding inside a building, but Faye points out that the Titan actually knows where they are. His prediction comes true when Titan comes up to them and catches a stab, Faye's senpai. Everyone seems horrified but feels relieved to see her alive and well. Suddenly, Asta's upper body turns red and she starts firing at everyone. They realize that she is now under Titan's control and run away from her. In the end, Faye and Asta are the only ones left untouched by the Titan, with a reluctant Asta chasing after them. Faye wonders what to do about her lower body, which seems unaffected, and traps her in a garbage can. After he tags her legs, she goes back to normal, proving that there is a hidden rule that lets them free people from Titan's control. Once they free Asta, though, they hear the Titan again and run after, telling her to go hide. While running away, Faye thinks about the winning condition for this game. He knows that defeating Titan isn't the goal, since that would just make it another battle game. Leshia nods, feeling like he thinks just like her. Faye tells her he's not even trying, and that games are just fun for him, making her smile. After running for some distance, though, they find the rest of the team under Titan and start getting chased by them. They get to a building and break off a bridge to it, buying them some time to escape from the unwilling soldiers. Faye then looks at them, while Leshia recalls all the events that happened to them. When she talks about how the loyalties of the players flipped, Faye gets an idea and smiles, feeling like he found the solution to the game. He points out to Leshia that these people are most likely a part of another game within the hide and seek game, and that there is another rule they need to use. Leshia realizes what he's talking about, and the two of them split up to achieve their goals. Faye acts as a distraction to Titan, which immediately gets him. Somehow, the Titan's punch does nothing, as Faye's power is revealed. With the name May Your God, Faye can survive anything in the elements, and thus, the Titan's attack cannot convert him into a soldier. Faye then grins and confidently announces to Titan that he has won the game. As Asta comes back to the rest of the stun group, he explains that the game they are playing is a board game, where the black and white teams need the most pieces to win. Since the buildings in the city were arranged in a pattern, they acted as the black pieces, which Titan destroyed. Faye and his teammates are the white pieces that got turned over to black by Titan. With Asta's help, though, Leshia tags them all and turns them back, flipping the pieces to white and ensuring the team's victory. After explaining everything, Faye asks Titan if he got everything right, and God nods before picking him up. After the game ends, Faye returns home and learns from Miranda that his game was a massive hit throughout the city. He also learns that even though Leshia is a former goddess, it was his teamwork with Leshia that allowed him to win so easily. Faye asks her about the kind of person Leshia is, and learns that she was so good at games that she'd beat everyone and end up lonely afterward. This reminds Day of himself, since he always used to be alone as well as a gifted child. Afterward, he returns from Miranda's office and meets Leshia, who asks him what his wish is if he ever wins 10 God games. Faye reveals that he remembers a sisterly young girl who taught him to play all the games he knows. Leshia is surprised to learn that this girl used to look just like her, but knows it can't be her since she has been sleeping for thousands of years. Faye wonders if it was fate that he got teamed up with a girl who looks exactly like his favorite older sister and gives her a high five, more than happy to be her partner. Later, Faye and Leshia find out from Miranda that they need more players with them to form a team. Then she goes on a random rant about how much she loves her sleep, and that anyone who disturbs it will get a month of working as punishment. After her rant ends, Miranda explains that even if Faye and Leshia form a good duo, having more team members with them will greatly increase their chances of success in future games. Leshia knows that she is right, but for some reason doesn't want to look for more teammates. Faye discusses this with Leshia the next day and tries contacting a few teams to see if they'd be interested in having them. The first guy they contact seems friendly towards Faye and agrees to have him with his team. However, once Faye talks about Leshia, the man's smile drops, and Faye learns why Leshia is so hesitant about getting more teammates. The man explains to Faye that Lecia is the fearsome dragon goddess who has destroyed every single hero in the city. Unfortunately, her victories were too brutal and she left everyone traumatized. This news surprises Faye, who glares at a flustered Lecia. She starts panicking and talking like she was from the Shakespeare era, which makes Faye realize she reverts to her old god language when cornered. However, before closing the call with Faye, the Inferno leader cheekily comments that Lecia's assets could be a bit bigger, which enraged the goddess. She starts coping with how everyone from thousands of years ago said the same thing even though hers is a great size, and the poor Faye is forced to admit it. He then tries contacting the leader of another great team to see if she'd be interested in having him. As usual, the girl is more than happy to have the talented Faye with her, but once she hears about Lecia, the poor girl gets PTSD and immediately cuts the call. It turns out, some time ago, Lecia had gone too heavy on her, which had sent her to the hospital. Lecia tried visiting her to apologize, but the girl thought she was there to finish the job and got even more traumatized. Faye wonders if any teams aren't terrified by Faye, and thinks that there are a lot of useful abilities team members could have. A person with one such ability suddenly appears before them as a girl teleports in front of them. Lecia and Faye watch with interest as she heads into the building inside. They feel excited to get a chance to get a new teammate, but the girl immediately drops a resignation letter as a player. Lecia immediately burns, making the poor girl lash out. After getting over her anger, the girl recognizes the duo as Faye and Lecia. To talk her out of retiring, Faye offers to treat her to some dessert. The hungry girl immediately changes her mind about retiring and sits down to eat. Faye asks her about what happened and learns that she is a player called Pearl. Unfortunately, despite having 3 chances, Pearl is retiring after just 1 loss. Faye starts to look up her record, while Pearl seems more interested in emptying the restaurant's pantries. After a bit of research, Faye finds out the reason behind Pearl quitting. It turns out that in one of her games, she had the goal of protecting her leader from a monster. Pearl was doing fine and had the monster chasing after her, but when the monster got close to her, she got scared and switched places with her leader, which led to him getting caught and losing her team the game. This mistake greatly humiliated Pearl and left her guilty and led to her deciding to quit. He puts down his phone to discuss this with Pearl but screams upon seeing 35 desserts in front of him. Faye then learns more about her ability, that she can also teleport objects and people she has recently come into contact with. Sadly, the poor girl thinks her mistake is unforgivable and refuses to go back to playing games. Lecia points out, though, that games are won by teamwork, and it's not possible that just one player can ruin the entire game for a team. She tries reaching out to her, but Pearl runs away. Lecia wonders if they should just look for another teammate, but Faye sighs, remembering the fun he had playing games, and feels sad if Pearl quit them on such a sad note. He later visits her house with Lecia, but unfortunately walks in at an inconvenient time. Pearl reveals that she is just used to teleporting into and out of her house, so she forgets that her door is unlocked sometimes. They notice some bags lying around in her house and learn that Pearl bought some gifts to apologize to her former teammate. Unfortunately, her team is a bunch of jerks who didn't even accept her apology. Faye and Lecia try again to get her out of retirement, but Pearl still doesn't change her mind. She reveals that she has always looked up to Faye and doesn't want to ruin his games like she did to her team. Both Faye and Lecia tell her she still deserves to play more games, and that they'll help her prove to her old team that she is not a useless player after all. Pearl feels uncertain but gets pushed to do it by Faye and Lecia. On the same day Pearl's old team, Inferno, is playing a game, Faye and Lecia take her with them. Pearl starts getting second thoughts, but Lecia drags her into the portal to the elements. Upon getting spawned right in the sky, everyone feels shocked as they fall from the clouds. Suddenly, Faye notices a massive creature flying around them and realizes it's a god notorious for having the most difficult games to play, Arobo. Of course, this challenge only excites this energetic youngster. He asks Pearl if she can teleport them to the ground, but she screams that she can only teleport up to 30 meters. Lecia solves their problem, though, by using her strong strength to fight against Arobo's body and land on top of the massive dragon. This site seems to be the starting point for their game. Once they land on the dragon, they immediately check their surroundings. The captain from Team Inferno greets everyone, explaining that a few of their members have already fallen off. Apparently, some monsters called Leviathans flying around the dragon had taken them away. The group then wonders what their objective for this game is. They see a little guardian meep with them, feeling sad for some reason. The meep tells the group that their objective is to make Arobo say a certain word. Until they make the god say this word, they cannot even leave the game area. When they ask what the word is, they get a hint that they've already said it once. After Faye thinks about it for a bit, he figures that the word is a simple ouch, so now they have to force this massive dragon to say it somehow. Unfortunately, they're also on a time limit, so they have to figure it out quickly. They make their way around the dragon's back but find no immediate clues as to where they're supposed to hit the dragon to make it scream out in pain. The Team Inferno hits a single scale with a massive combined attack, but it doesn't even make a dent. Lecia then tries to punch the dragon's back as hard as she can, but all it does is knock out some poor schmuck from Pearl's old team. She immediately apologizes to Team Inferno, who quickly accepts her apology. Talk about goddess privilege. Then, the numb meep following them remembers another hint for the group and suggests that they can try to trigger a certain action that will let them win the game. Apparently, this action temporarily opens up a state where they can get the win. The group then goes around trying to figure out what this trigger word is and suddenly notices a bunch of strange monsters flying around the dragon's back. At this sight, Pearl suddenly gets scared and hugs Faye, triggering Lecia's jealousy. She goes up to Pearl and motivates her to try her best to win this game. With her newfound motivation, Pearl manages to find the dragon's weak spot. She confidently tells Faye that if this weak spot gets hit, surely Arobo will get hurt and scream. Unfortunately, despite Faye's warnings, she smacks the spot really well, which makes the dragon fire some beams and almost knock a teammate into orbit. This pisses off Team Inferno, and Pearl grows quiet once again, fearing that her foolishness has hurt her team once again. However, this time, Faye is there to defend her. He points out that since the dragon reacted to getting hit, the tail must be a clue towards winning the game. He also notes that all of the beams missed the group, meaning they must have another function. This doesn't convince Inferno, though, who thinks that Pearl is just being defended for holding them back again. They remind her that it was because of her mistake their team now has 2 losses, and cannot afford another one. Faye shrugs it off, however, determined to find the second rule that will help his team win the second game. Meanwhile, Lecia gets annoyed by Inferno bullying Pearl so much that she lashes out at them. Then, she realizes it would be unfair of a goddess to trash away some weak humans. So she calms down and tells them to just focus on enjoying the game at hand instead. Inferno doesn't understand how they're supposed to have fun, but Lecia points to Faye, who is deep in thought. Faye then finishes thinking and gets up. He announces to everyone that he has a plan, and tells Lecia to hit the dragon this time. Inferno is outraged, but they have no choice but to wait as she attacks, and she does it with full power, which leads to a huge rumble. However, this attack also destroys the clouds around them and hurts the Leviathan monsters flying there. Faye realizes that these Leviathans aren't necessarily Arobo's servants, but would rather be enemies or pests they can use to their advantage. Using this ability, the group can fly around and see Arobo's weak point. Faye knows that the large scales are too hard to damage, so he thinks about a clear weak spot it could have: its eyes. Somehow, the god managed to hide its eyes away from his head, so Faye had to search for them. He ends up finding them hidden under the massive dragon's belly. However, once the eyes are opened, the dragon begins a fierce attack, not letting anyone near them. Faye realizes that this is their final challenge and whispers a plan into Pearl's ears. She nods, and he sends Lecia over to distract the dragon. With Lecia, the protective shield around the dragon's eyes gets destroyed. Faye then gets close to the dragon, which launches a massive beam at him. However, at this moment, a portal suddenly opens up in front of him, which directs the beam into its eye instead. As Team Inferno watches the game through a screen in amazement, they realize that because of Faye's win, they have also won due to Pearl's team. Back to the dragon, a humanoid goddess steps out, now missing an eye. She admits defeat and presents a crystal gem to Faye for winning the game, saying he can use it to see her next time he wants to play an even harder game with her. Of course, it remains to be seen if anyone will take her up on her offer. The scene then shifts to a girl's room, where a young girl is experiencing a nightmare. She recalls a memory of a god's game, running to a towering eye. As the girl gets closer, she desperately tries to reach the eye, but to no avail as she wakes up. After waking up from her nightmare, she gets out of bed. In her room, she then sees the TV running with a video of Faye's game playing on it. Faye's calm demeanor and smooth moves inspire her, and she decided to become his apprentice. Back in Miranda's place, Lecia seems eager to play a game but learns that because of her dramatic performance with Arobo, more and more players have now appeared, and thus there is a busy line that can take up to a month to connect to a game. This upsets her, and she decides to steal a whole gate for herself. After she drags a reluctant Pearl away, Miranda ignores the goddess's crazy behavior. She discusses this with Faye, who thinks Lecia might truly go insane if she is unable to play a game for a while. Miranda smiles, saying there is something she can do soon. Faye then learns that his team's victories have attracted a lot of attention worldwide. Thus, a whole slew of teams now wish to challenge and defeat his team. This news is forwarded to Lecia, and she leaves with her team to attend the New World Games tour. The group boards a train headed for the city of Malra. It's the first city out of many where they'll face their challenges. On their way there, they see sceneries that look like the prehistoric era. This is because, in their world, most of the planet is hostile and unexplored. Thus, humans need to play games and win to get Arise powers. Thinking about this, Pearl remembers their destination, Malra, and discusses it with Faye. It wasn't the only city where a rival team wanted to challenge them, but a dart shot from Pearl had chosen it as their next location. The next day, the group finally arrives in the city. The girls get off of the train, excited for sightseeing instead of focusing on their battle, but they suddenly encounter a problem. The strange-looking girl called Nell Reckless holds up a flag welcoming Faye's party to her city. She suddenly approaches Faye and offers to become his subordinate. Faye is shocked, but the girl offers to be a permanent free maid for him. People around them gather at the scene, wondering what kind of evil master Faye really is. This action makes both Pearl and Leshia suspicious of him, but the poor guy tries to reassure them that he doesn't know this insane girl. Nell keeps begging Faye, becoming more and more desperate by the second, but when she snaps out of her emotions, she notices the group disappeared. She spots them running away and uses a strange power to speed up. In her haste, though, she forgets that there is actual traffic in the city and uses her power to flip the car in her way. Unfortunately, the poor bloke inside really doesn't appreciate that he now has to visit the hospital instead of the police station. We then shift back to Faye's group, which after getting rid of the weird girl, enters a certain hall. Inside this hall, a burly man approaches Pearl. She is first startled by this strange man and accuses him of harassment, but he reveals that he is the chief secretary of Malra, Belegar Ions. Ion starts leading the group to his office, making the fat Pearl groan about the large flight of stairs. While walking up the stairs, Ions reveals that a large stadium has been reserved for the team's fights and that 10,000 people have already booked tickets to watch the match. This number shocks Pearl, who starts realizing the stage she is on. However, Ion seems to respect the group and reassures them that they'll be receiving plenty of cheers from the crowd. As they reach another floor of the building, Ion shows the group pictures of the historic games in their city played by other gangs. Leshia notices them wearing a certain uniform, and Ions begins explaining the different ranks between the player management organization and the arcane hall. As he is explaining, though, a mysterious young man in black robes named Dax walks in. Dax is a strong rookie player like Faye and holds him in high regard. He offers the new hero to join his team, but Faye is uninterested. Dax sighs and leaves, but Faye knows that man is not convinced that easily. After finishing introductions, the group finally gets a room to relax. There, Faye thinks back to the strange girl they first encountered. After doing some research on her, he finds out that Nell was a very solid player and lost all of her matches because her team would give up too easily. Thus, her talent had gone completely wasted. As the group sighs about her lack of communication about this, they get a doorbell from room service, who turns out to be the player in question. Upon finding out that her flimsy disguise is more obvious than a Halloween costume, Nell runs away before they can ask her anything. Nell wonders why she is so scared to face the group but runs into Dax himself. Dax speaks up, saying both of them were good friends who swore to become stronger. He tells Nell that the reason she lost was because of bad teammates and luck, not because of her lack of skill. He offers to accept her into his team, but Nell refuses, fixed on becoming Faye's teammate. A few days later, it is finally time for Faye's team to begin their fight against Dax's team. As they enter the stadium, the crowd erupts into a cheer, while Dax proudly tells the group he'll be going all out for the sake of his passion. Seeing how sincere he is, Faye feels fired up and gets ready to face this battle. Pearl notices that this is a card game based on a traditional Japanese game, Sugoroku. Dax smiles, saying that this game is new to him as well, so the battle is fair for everyone. The announcer then begins introducing the matchups to the audience, before explaining all the rules. Dax then calls out his partner, Eldritch, and wonders who Faye will choose. He expects to face off against the goddess Leshia, but is surprised when Faye chooses Pearl instead. The pairs then prepare to face off in a game called Mind Arena, a turn-based board game where the goal is to reach 44 squares or defeat your enemies first. The game has healer classes that focus on healing and getting ahead, and damaging classes that focus on stopping their enemies instead. Each player loses a card whenever they use it, and it goes into their storage. For their start, the pairs get a hand of cards. Pearl notices that she has some powerful but hard-to-use cards, and Faye advises her to save them for later. Then, he discusses what class to choose with Pearl. Faye notes that his team has a lot more healing cards than damaging cards, so defeating his opponents is out of the question. He notices Dax smirking at him and gets ready to choose his class. Both Dax and Eldritch choose Wizard, the damaging class, while Faye chooses Traveler and Pearl Healer. Everyone magically changes into their cool outfits, and the match formally begins. The turns begin by choosing a dice card to make the steps. Both Dax and Faye land on the 6th square, and can thus not draw any cards. They also learn that while normal zones allow them to draw cards, there are also trap zones where they receive damage and debuffs instead. Faye chooses to stay on his square instead of moving so he can restrict Dax's cards as well. Then, Dax begins his turn and uses a strong wizard spell off the bat. He casts a barrier that causes damage each time his opponents make a move, but also gives him extra damage if he gets hit. This barrier checks Faye and Pearl from setting up too much and playing casually. Then, his teammate begins the offensive by using a damaging spell to hit both Pearl and Faye. With the added boost of the wizard class and Dax's barrier, Faye and Pearl instantly lose a quarter of their health, falling into the risk of losing in a few turns. Dax knows that Faye plans on trying to cross all the squares, so his goal is to eliminate him before he can reach it. However, Faye stays calm and tells Pearl to save her cards as well, since they'll be able to draw out their opponent's cards and defeat them in the end. The next turn, after Faye finishes moving and picking his card, Pearl unleashes her own damaging card, Mega Fire, which she conveniently named Pearl Fire, shocking her enemies. However, Dax gets inspired by this and names his attack as Dax Thunder, making his teammate sigh at him. However, his play is nothing to laugh at, since the combined effects of his barrier and ability leave Pearl with very little health left. To counter this, she uses a healing spell and puts a card in her storage. Unfortunately, Eldritch predicted this and used a card that blocks all healing damage. Thankfully, Faye steps in just in time and uses a spell to heal Pearl. He then turns the tables by casting a damaging spell on Dax and saving a card for later. Faye's team seems to be safe for now, but the enemy team still has the lead with all their damage set up. In the next turn, Faye finally uses his Traveler's ability and skips 7 tiles ahead of his dice roll. Eldritch then begins her turn and uses another damaging spell to damage Pearl. Fortunately, Pearl has her barrier this time, but a prepared Eldritch uses another spell to take it out. This lets Dax chime in as well, and he uses his attack to whittle down his enemy team's health. Faye tries to intervene, but Dax then uses another card to prevent him from helping Pearl. Pearl feels scared, but Faye still trusts her to win. Dax and Eldritch begin another turn, and the game seems over as they begin to finish off Pearl's remaining health. However, she suddenly uses a spell that allows her to get an extra turn, with the condition that she loses all her health points the next turn. Using this extra turn, she uses a secret card that heals her up and uses 2 more damaging spells to defeat Dax and Eldritch. Unfortunately, they seem to be prepared even for this wild play, and Dax uses a spell to direct all his damage to Eldritch, which leaves him in the game. Pearl sighs, feeling like she disappointed Faye, but he knows that she is about to win him the whole game. This finally shocks the calm Dax, who learns that Pearl has one final card that lets her take out a card from storage. Using this card, she draws out the healer's ultimate card, which heals her of all her damage and spells and deflects her damage onto Dax. This brilliant move finally ends this massive mind game, and Dax is forced to admit that Pearl is not just some deadbeat that Faye picked up. He smiles, feeling like this is just the beginning of his challenges against Faye, and roars to his audience. As Dax begins to confidently make a speech, Pearl goes up to Faye, pleased by her victory, but also surprised that the loser Dax is getting so much attention. Faye smiles at Dax's old behavior, saying that a sincere and passionate guy like him deserves it, and Pearl smiles. After the exhausting game, Faye's party heads out to relax in the city. Leshia takes a look at some game vendors and eyes a bunch of luxurious sets. The shop owners smile, warning the cute girl that she can't afford such expensive games. However, she then takes out some random card that Miranda gave to her. The man's eyes pop out as he sees the legendary platinum card only available to the richest of folks, filled with infinite credit. Faye warns Leshia to not abuse Miranda's allowance, and the group heads on. They spend their money on 10 different restaurants to fill Pearl's bottomless abyss of a stomach before they're stopped by some fan. Some unaware girls happily ask for Leshia's autograph, not knowing the terror behind this young goddess. Meanwhile, the attractive Faye also gets a lot of attention from shy girls but flips out when he sees an entire line of girls waiting for him. Poor Pearl expects some attention but is sadly left behind to rot in all her fat glory. After finishing giving all of her autographs, Leshia suddenly feels like she needs an autograph from the legend Faye himself. He feels a bit nervous and tells her to wait until they get some paper, but she requests it on her hair ribbon instead. This leaves Faye flustered, but he has no choice but to listen to this feisty and cute goddess. Suddenly, a sour Pearl barges in to ruin their cute moment, while poor Nell can only watch them from a bush nearby. She then notices a group of people rushing by as they head over to meet their idol, Dax. The group gawks as Dax heads over to a restaurant and begins eating. Pearl explains that Dax is actually a popular streamer whose main source of income is eating in front of a camera. Faye feels bad about the state of the world while a bunch of dumb girls watch Dax from outside. Being attractive means you can make millions off of desperate girls willing to watch you eat. The group also meets Eldritch, who seems to be following Dax. She explains how famous Dax is and gets asked if she feels jealous of all the girls. However, after shamelessly lying about only being in a business relationship with Dax, she shows her true colors and joins the crowd of fangirls, staring at Dax like a bunch of dumb puppies. Faye then looks around before calling out Nell from her bush. She feels surprised that her cover was blown so easily, but finds out that everyone knew where she was anyway. She comes out and presents her requests to become his team analyst or maid. Faye refuses once again and tells her there is something else she can do for him, knowing that she doesn't want the side roles. Faye's group later heads over to the city's arcane hall for another God's game. Ions informs them that to meet the minimum requirement, he has arranged for another team to partner up with them. Before heading into the portal, Faye hopes that Nell will observe his game and get some much-needed inspiration. Faye's group then heads out for the game and gets teleported to a very hot desert. There, they meet Dax, who is their partner for this game, and another woman, Camilla, who is a party leader. After everyone is settled, Dax calls to begin the challenge, and a massive pyramid rises. The god Meep appears and begins explaining the rule set to everyone. They'll all get a flower bud that looks the same on the outside. However, inside this bud can be a sand flower, which has no effect, a poison flower, which can damage the opposing team, and one sunflower, which the team needs to protect and plant at the top of the pyramid. They will be facing off against enemies who will have their flowers and the enemy god with his sunflower. The guardians initially appear to be cute kitty cats, except they're also the size of a building. Faye quickly begins strategizing with his team, and Dax follows his lead. He first asks everyone to check their flowers and give them to them, as the group decides who to pick for which role. He shuffles the flowers before giving them back out, leaving some teammates confused, while others remain understanding. Faye then explains that his strategy involves shuffling the flowers so nobody knows who has the sunflower. This will make it so that nobody protects the sunflower user, and the enemy team cannot figure out the sunflower holder and steal their flower away. They also know that switching flowers after the battle is impossible unless a teammate sacrifices their spot. After they have finished deciding their plan, the Meep calls to begin the game, and they see the god standing right in front of them, called Mahatma. This humanoid god carefully observes the group before noticing something strange with Faye and Leshia's flowers. Both of them stand together and claim that they are the ones holding the sunflower. Meanwhile, we see Arobo floating randomly in the sky. She feels bored that Faye isn't back yet and decides to change into some sporty clothes in her new getup. This playful goddess gets ready to rumble. Back to the gods game, we see Faye's teammates surprised by his bold strategy. However, Dax is the first one to accept it and smiles. Watching from a screen, Nell realizes that Faye and Leshia are probably holding a sunflower and a poison flower, or they could not have either flower. This strategy isn't perfect, but it will ensure that the god needs time to think about his moves. Faye heads into the battle, confident in his strategy, while the god abuses his powers and summons over 1,000 cat servants to help him chase the whole team down. According to the god, this is fair game, much to the group's terror. While running away from the cat monsters, Camilla complains about their numbers. She thought that having 15 members was more than enough for defeating God, but is now left wondering why she even bothers with this career. Faye realizes that the cat golems will catch up to them if his group doesn't do anything. Feldrich speeds up to distract the cats, showing off her great physical abilities. However, the cats also unleash spells, revealing just how OP they are. The group is forced to stop, as they wonder just how they can stop these Nico monsters. The cats catch up and start harassing everyone, trapping the members they can and stealing their flowers. Thankfully, the group has some spell users of their own who blow away the first few bunches of cats. Unfortunately, there are just too many furry monsters, and some of them manage to do some damage to Pearl. She teleports away to save herself but spawns another trap. Thus, after Feldrich saves Pearl with a falcon punch, the group is forced to retreat, with a massive fissure from Leshia buying everyone some much-needed time. They put some distance between themselves and the cats. However, because they're in the god's domain, Leshia knows that the fissure will quickly close. Running away, they see a green oasis in the desert. Everyone knows it's the oldest trick in the book, but is forced to visit since they need a place to help Pearl rest. Faye tries to get Leshia to use a fissure again, but this time, the cats just jump over the massive crevice as if it didn't exist. Faye wonders how shameless the god is, but has no time to think about it. As the cats get closer and closer, Camilla's team begins sacrificing itself, and she gives up her spot heroically to buy time for the rest of her team. Running away, Feldrich wonders why Dax isn't hiding his flower, and learns that he wants to keep it near him in case he has to make a sacrifice. After Camilla's sacrifice, the group is able to get closer and closer to the pyramid, but Dax gets swept up by a sandstorm. Feldrich stays behind to fight off the cat golems, saying she only has a sand flower, and Leshia joins her. Meanwhile, after returning home, Dax meets Nell and tells her that he has fulfilled his end of the bargain by doing his best to help Faye win. Remembering that Nell had firmly believed Faye would have won his fight with Dax, he respects her choice and honors the bet. Nearby, Ions discusses with Camilla if Faye's plan is going to work. According to her, Lecia and Eldritch most likely have the sand flowers, and Faye and Pearl have the sun and flowers with them. Meanwhile, back to the game, Pearl and Faye manage to reach the pyramid. Unfortunately, Faye, who has the sunflower, gets caught and throws his flower to Pearl. She takes it and jumps up, trying to get to the top, where the god is waiting to stop her. When he tries to block her, though, she uses her teleport, which he predicts, and tries to defend the top. To his shock, though, Pearl teleported right above him and stole his flower away. She smiled, feeling happy that she got the god's sunflower, but when she opened it up, it turned into a poison flower. Mahatma then laughs, explaining that he decided to trick her as well, and had hidden the real flower in the oasis. This devastates Pearl, who is now unmoving due to the poisoned flower. The god prepares to take her sunflower as well, but is shocked to find out it's just a regular sand flower. Faye suddenly starts climbing up, revealing the sunflower in his own hands. It turns out, Dax had the real sunflower, but had thrown it into a portal to Faye before getting swallowed by the sandstorm. Using this, Faye had gotten 2 flowers and used the sand flower as a decoy. Mahatma laughs, ready to stop Faye, but suddenly stops in his tracks. Faye reminds him that his followers didn't know about any of this, so they had taken away a poisoned flower from Lecia. Even still, Faye only had 5 seconds to place the flower before Mahatma could move again. With the help of Feldrich, though, he can launch himself up just fast enough to get past the god and win the game. After winning this nerve-wracking mind game, Faye returns home to Nell, who seems happy to see him. However, he coaxes out her true feelings and learns that she does indeed want to play the games herself. Faye smiles and tells her that there is a chance he can give her just what she needs. He talks to Miranda and learns that there is a god called Bookmaker, who can reset a loss if you win against it. Unfortunately, this also means that Faye will have to sacrifice one of his wins for Nell, which humanity cannot bear. Thus, Pearl volunteers and is placed to share a win for her friend and give her a new chance at achieving her dream. With the quest to search for Bookmaker and the support of her friends by her side, Nell thanks Faye for this incredible help. What she doesn't know is that soon, she will find herself more helpless than ever before at the hand of this fateful god.